Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the great introduction, David. And thank you all for being curious as to how one goes about creating chaos in what would be a vacant space or a vacant lot or a vacant park. So as David mentioned, I co-founded Norwalk 2.0 in 2010, so we're in our 9th year of operations. We're a nonprofit. Despite the name Norwalk in our name, we kind of do lots of different things in other towns, communities, and cities. And what we try and do is never the same thing twice. And yet, there's a theme that kind of runs through the work that we do. We're most known for right now the Pink Container Project. It is 2 shipping containers that we transformed into a mobile art space. And we have this located across from the Maritime Aquarium, which you can vaguely see in the distance back there. And we do concerts and art exhibits. I have to move closer this way, okay. We do concerts and art exhibits out of this facility. So this is a typical night. I like to refer to it as Norwalk trying to be Brooklyn. We have the train that runs behind it. You may have heard the little kerfuffle about replacing the walk bridge, which is where the train runs over because it keeps getting stuck. So we thought this was a great place to activate. There's never been any kind of arts activation in this tiny park, even though it's across from Sono, which is one of the more vibrant downtown-y type areas of Norwalk. Another thing that we're known for these days is a project called Iconic Norwalk. In that we offered a competition of sorts for people to upload what they love about Norwalk that they thought was iconic. We're in our 3rd year of that particular program, and we have received over 2,500 entries in the project. And what it essentially did is it put Norwalk on the map of Instagram at a time when people weren't really using Instagram. And for me to say that is kind of weird because, of course, everybody's on Instagram right now. But when we conceived of this project and wrote the grant, the number of followers that Norwalk 2.0 had at that time was under 100. And it was I think it was even under 50. So now we have over 700 followers. And as we know with most social media, people follow and unfollow and so on. But this project lives, and it lives in a couple different ways. It lives online as part of Instagram, but we also print out the work of the winning entries and all of the entries and do exhibits around town demonstrating what people have submitted. And it serves a couple of purposes. It serves the idea of being able to document what the real world thinks of the town that you live in or the town that you're representing, as opposed to from a planning standpoint where formalized focus groups will get put together and people will say, well, what do people love about the city that they live in? And they'll say different things than what they actually take pictures of. So there's a lot of social demographic information that we're able to extract from a lot of our projects, which help inform the economic development projects that we then pursue in addition to our art stuff. Inside Out is a project that we've done a few times. We've not done that in consecutive years. This is basically when we solicit artists around the region and we occupy studio space, storefronts, restaurants that are actually filled with people, anything we can do to highlight the diversity of arts within our community. And we did this in August of 2016 because that we found out 2 weeks before that the Sono Arts Festival was not going to happen that year. So we put this project together in about 2 weeks, and there we go. So we basically convinced all of our artist friends, and they in turn convinced all of their artist friends that they needed to go and install in all sorts of different places. So here's the social media attempts of getting people down there. This is inside the notorious, the infamous Black Bear Saloon, where we had artists work with the management of those restaurants on Restaurant Row on Washington Street, if you're familiar with Norwalk, to have art displayed in the establishment all day as they were going about their normal business. This is a storefront that took the theme of branding that we had with the red dot, and we of course published a map that we distributed all over the place so people could go to the places where art was installed. So we tried to have some last minute wayfinding as a result of doing things at various places over a large geography. It was helpful for people to find where the art installations were visually, as well as having a map to locate them. 64 Wall Street. This was a 4,000 square foot vacant property that had not been leased out for over 20 years. And we had formed Norwalk 2.0 kind of to highlight the fact that property owners land bank buildings and they do not feel compelled to lease them out to viable businesses or to artists or for any purposes unless there's an incentive to do that or a stick to make them do that. And we staged a protest in front of, at that time, there was about 70% vacancy on Main Street in Norwalk, and we said we wanted to do something about this, and we wanted to change the zoning regulations and put some additional taxes for long-term vacancies. And as a result, the property owner of this particular space said, okay, you can have it for the summer and see what you can do. So we did artist talks. We did art exhibits, including the congressional art exhibit that Jim Himes puts together for student artists. We did talks on entrepreneurship, on finding money, on books. We even had a divorced men's night where people would come and sit on our donated sofas to talk about what they were going through from a divorce standpoint. Basically, we acted as part community center, part art exhibit, part incubator. We brought in Wi-Fi. That's a whole story of how do you get old buildings that have sat vacant for 20 years to have electricity, bathrooms, and Wi-Fi. And it was just our attempt to activate the space. And they did activate the space. They kicked us out, and they brought in a CrossFit gym, which just last week closed. So, and this was back in 2013. So we have a pretty good track record of whenever we do a project in a vacant storefront, we get kicked out, and that's by design. We're not trying to be there permanently, but it does get leased out because we do bring a lot of attention to the facility. This is also 64 Wall Street. We did kids programming. We do a lot of partnerships. This was in partnership with Stepping Stones Children's Museum. And then, because we like to be outdoors, we took a vacant park and created a series of concerts there, which to this day still go on. We don't do them. Like I said, we try not to do the same thing twice. So we initiated it. We put stages in place. We had art that was designed within our facility, and then we hung it in the library, we've hung it in the city hall, we've hung it all over the place. Always trying to not just do things in the spaces that we're in, but outside the spaces that we're in. So this turned into, since we like to be outside, we rented 4 shipping containers and built an artist village over the course of 3 weekends, and only had 2 days of rain, which wasn't too bad. And what was great about this is we had music every night that we were open, and people from the neighborhood who we did not know came out and played in our shipping containers. So we were very excited about activating a neighborhood-centric art project. As with all of our projects, it's not just us showing art or having people perform art in our spaces. We want people to make art. So we do a lot of coercing with our artists to get them to work with the public and show them the techniques, show them the materials, get them to participate in the project, not just that they're coming to view something. This is the interior of one of the shipping containers. We put blackboards on the interior, put a whole bunch of chalk out, and we said, come make art, and then every night we'd wipe it down, and the next day would be a brand new set of art. This was the very first storefront that we did on Washington Street, and it did get flooded as part of Irene, so we've experienced that as well. It was in our first year of operations, and this was the market. This was a multi-artist exhibit that coincided for the entire summer in the lead up to the Sono Arts Festival. So this is, again, the market, and you can see that in addition to the four walls, we had temporary walls put up in the interior of the space, and we crammed as much art and people in it because we had to pay for lots of air conditioning, so we figured that we were just going to go overboard and putting these things together. So we do this because we want to create a vibrant and flourishing creative scene in the areas that we work in. And so for much of our existence, we've done this in Norwalk. We do these things so that we matchmake, for lack of a better way of expressing it, artists and the creative community with the business community, with government, and with the property owners. Without being the matchmaker, these entities would operate in parallel and never cross paths. And we are always trying to mix them up together and say good things will come out of that mixing. So by doing place-based art projects, we think that we're building a better connection between the community that lives, works, and creates in our towns. And we think that as we put projects together, we are always keeping that in the back of our mind. What is the outcome from an economic development? What is the outcome from a community development? What is the outcome from bringing the community together to build something bigger? The end result of our projects are not the projects themselves. It's what happens afterwards. So I'm sure that everybody has read a slide that looks exactly like this. And so I'm not going to read it verbatim, but it's important to understand that the work that we do is based with a creative ethos, and that we care very much about the quality of art and the artists that we're working with, but we also want to be all-inclusive and work with the community as well. And we veer, as good creative people do, all over the place as we put these things together, but it's important to always remember and go back to why you do these things. So every project really needs to be solving a problem. If you're just doing something for entertainment's sake, it's not going to be as successful as you probably envision it's going to be. So we wanted to change the perception of our downtown, which we thought was distressed. We thought that people who lived in Norwalk didn't really understand how many people actually earned a living by creating something, whether it was the guy who was making designer cupcakes, to the people that were creating these fantastic hairstyles, to people who were performing artists and visual artists and audio artists. We just got them all out of the woodwork and participating in our projects. And because, like I said, we like to be outside, we're always trying to get people to walk from one location to another location. So that's another recurring theme that you see in our projects. So what does public art bring to solving that particular problem? So what it does is that it changes the experiences that people currently have. So if you're looking at a storefront and saying, it would be great if we did something here, you have to look outside that storefront and say, how do I get people who walk by this or drive by this every single day to see something different and to know that something's happening? And it's that change, it's that chaos, it's that vibrance and visualization that become really, really important in creating public or place-based art. And by some of the design techniques that we use in activating spaces, basically ensure that that happens. So the permanent elements that we try and do, the art that gets created out of it, we try and place within the city. But the impermanent stuff is the more interesting aspect of, because we're trying to get people to create art in these places so that they have an emotional response to the place and an emotional response to the project and carries it forward beyond that. So I mentioned earlier that we had started a concert series at Fries Park, which was a vacant park. Once we got the concert series going and funded it for the first year, we pulled back and the community rallied to keep it going. And that to us was a successful outcome of that project. It wasn't that we could say that 4,000 people came to these concerts. It was that somebody was willing and wanted to keep it going, because that speaks to building the community in a way that will last long beyond, you know, our lifetimes and project history in Norwalk. So what does a storefront do? It gives you a unique way to get public participation, because storefronts tend to be typically where people walk. And at the very least, even if you're in a strip mall, there are cars that park in front of it. You will get people out of their cars. And so the visualizations that you want to do need to address the fact that people are mostly pedestrians and not necessarily in their vehicles. The other thing is that most of the cool things that happen inside towns, particularly in Connecticut, are very suburban related. And so we like partnering with other institutions that are very fixated on their sense of place. So in Norwalk, it's our library, it's our aquarium, it's our children's museum at City Hall. And we say, no, we're gonna work together, and we're gonna do things. And we've approached it in different ways. We've promoted things that are happening within their facilities in our spaces, and in turn we have done projects in their spaces just to activate what's going on. And what ended up happening out of one of our interventions is that the city of Norwalk decided it wanted to celebrate its WPA mural collection, and took many, many years, but they eventually got there. They produced a map, they cleaned up the collection, they actually put labels on the collection indicating what the history behind the works were and everything. And again, the outcome from our project was, we will bring attention, we will highlight this, we will bring people together to do something about it, but it lives on beyond our intervention. That brings in a very important point. It's really important, if you're in a storefront, to work with the existing businesses around you. And the best way I like to express it is, there is no point to doing a crowd gathering music performance on the nights and partnering with restaurants on the nights that they're already busy. If you're going to be activating a performance exhibit and to bring people to go to the restaurants, do it on the nights that they're not busy, because that's when they need the help. You know, they're gonna do fine on the Friday and Saturday nights. They're not gonna do fine on the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday nights. So we have historically done programming on Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays. We break our own rules. Sometimes we say, you know, we're tired of trying to swim uphill on this, and we do things on Thursday and Friday and Saturdays. But it depends on what the project goal is for us to do that. So the lessons learned from all of the things that we've done is that it's a daily process. Everything has to change on a daily basis. That you have to be nimble and being able to adapt, because if anything will go wrong, it will go wrong. We have a great track record of working in spaces that did not have any bathroom facilities. That endeared us to lots of our neighbors, because we had to go over to the open businesses and say, hey, you know, we're doing this and this vacant thing, and don't like the vacant thing, so, but we'll be bringing people and we don't have any bathrooms, can we send people your way? And most of the restaurants and the businesses said sure, because they saw us every day. We worked with them and said, hey, if it's too much, let us know, we won't send people over. And we'll encourage people to buy your stuff or eat at your restaurant, and so on. And so it was a partnership. It wasn't, it was a challenge, but it worked in terms of making people aware of the other businesses on the street and why we were doing what we were doing in some of the spaces that we were at. That being said, we often had people expecting a completely different experience than what we were offering. They were looking for the art show, and they weren't expected to make art. They were looking for the white tents in the park. They weren't expecting shipping containers. So there's a lot of preconceptions about what art is, and if you don't do the things that are expected, then that's not considered art. And that was a very interesting conversation to have with a lot of the public on that. Permits. I know that David alluded to this. So I had the benefit of being the former zoning chair for the city of Norwalk, so I kind of had an inside track. But prior to being the zoning chair, I had no experience in land use, no experience in buildings, no experience in permitting. In fact, I kind of viewed that permitting was something that other people did, and I didn't have to do that. However, permitting can work to your advantage because when you start working with the people that need to give you permits and tell them what you're trying to do and ask for their help, it opens up the door in being able to get the permits done properly and expedited, because sometimes, things run a little bit late. So it's always helpful to basically ask for help and not be afraid to do that when you're looking at permits and saying, I don't understand why you're making me fill this out. Can you explain what you're afraid of? And what they're afraid of are some amazing things. They're afraid of noise. They don't want to get complaints at City Hall about whatever you're doing. So if you're in a park and you want to throw a music concert, and you should be prepared to be able to say, we have a sound guy. We're going to keep it at this decibel. We're going to cut off at 11 o'clock. If there's somebody who's going to complain, we'll alter our programming and make the loud stuff earlier and the more quiet stuff later. That gets back to being nimble and being adaptable into what you're doing. But also, it gives you a great track record in working with the regulatory agencies that you have to work with, because the next time that you go for something and you say, here's my sketch, here are the hours, this is what I want to do, the permits go a lot faster than in the beginning. And as a great example of that, we convinced about 12 restaurants before the food truck phase to be our food vendors at an outdoor festival, and they had never done it before. It took us a month to figure out what the health permit was. The health department did not know how to give a permit to a restaurant that was off premises that did not have a tent or traditional cooking stations or traditional places where you wash your hands. So we had to work through with everybody so that they understood what we were trying to do and let us do it and still meet the rules. And the famous one that we had was we wanted to sell beer and wine. And there was ordinances in the town of Norwalk that you could not sell beer or wine or consume beer and wine in certain parks. And of course, the main park that we were using was Matthews Park. And we really wanted to have people strolling around looking at art, sipping wine and beer. So up to the liquor commissioner, explaining what we were trying to do, police chief, who's now our mayor, explaining what we were trying to do. And they basically said, okay, as long as you check your IDs and people had noticeable wristbands, you'll be allowed to do this, but you have to enclose where you're selling this. So we created the kayak of beer. We took an old kayak, we put a whole bunch of ice in it, we put the beer in there, we had the wine on the side, and people then went to the kayak of beer in order to get their alcoholic beverages and their wristband, and then walk through our project, which is called Party in the Park. So there are ways, again, asking for help, explaining why you're doing it, explaining what you're trying to do, and being able to accommodate what they're concerned about, and meeting that in a creative way will get you a long way. Most of the people that, we always go into every project thinking it's important for us to invite people that we don't know. And a true sign of a great project is we walk in and we say, who are these people? We don't know who they are. How did they hear about us? This is great. But we do get a lot of repeat visitors to our projects, especially ones that run multiple nights. And the reason that we do is because every day is different. So if you're activating a storefront and you're doing an exhibit, our recommendation is you swap the exhibit out every 10 days. It's a lot of work. Nobody likes hanging artwork. Nobody likes taking down artwork. But by changing the exhibits, you are going to get people coming back because they know there's something new there. Engaging the stakeholders. The stakeholders are not just the people in the creative community, it's your elected officials, it's your government officials. Everyone in City Hall gets put on our news blast, and it's up to them to unsubscribe. Whether they show up or not isn't the point. That they know something's happening, that they know we're doing it, that they know why we're doing it. And we do this before the event, during the event, and after the event. So they are always aware of what we're doing, why we're doing it, and we do lots of pictures because nobody likes to read. So this is another shot of inside one of the shipping containers of the daily art. And this is the outside of the shipping container. So once we realized that people really liked drawing on things, we said, let's put up some whiteboards on the outside of the shipping containers and have people do stuff. And you can see this is our promotion of the city murals, the WPA murals. We did a sip and stroll, so we basically had themed cocktails available at different restaurants and somebody talking about the history of the WPA murals. This is just one of our many strategy sessions. We always invited the public to help us plan and create the events. These are not top-down events. We always invite people to participate in what we're doing. And we do unique promotions. We've done a lot of work with lawn signs and banners. This is a part of a fence art project where we put historic photographs of places in Norwalk that don't exist or have been completely transformed at the locations that the photographs were shot, and then some explanatory text. The city was never going to promote the fact that it had murals inside City Hall. The murals had been in there for 25 years. Nobody ever did any kind of signage out front. So we put a sign up and put it right on City Hall and then told them that we did that. And we said it's really simple. If you say it's a free exhibit and what it is, WPA murals, and it's inside City Hall, people will come and look for it. And they did. And so again, the outcome was that the city finally went through and put labels on all of the artwork and shifted them around and created a more of a permanent type of exhibit as opposed to decorating the many hallways of City Hall without any kind of indication of what you were actually looking at. We also produce lots of maps. We do them on Google, we print them out. These are downloadable maps that were part of our fence art series. And again, we were always telling people they should go out and walk and explore so that the work that we put into the exhibits and the locations and the activation live on beyond the projects. And that's just an example of the old photos and the description about it. And this is up on our discovernorwalk.com website. So this is just giving you a laundry list of how we promote things. We're all over the place. And we're, as David can attest, extremely last minute in how we end up promoting things. And that's because we are all over the place in trying to promote things. We tend to always try and break new ground to reach new audiences. That's our primary focus. Everybody else, we kind of figure we'll figure out where we are. Really important, before, during, and after. Just don't tell people that you're going to be doing something and then stop the conversation. It's really important to keep that conversation going. I think I've covered everything that I've said here. Partnering is the greatest way to get the word out. Getting people involved in helping you design your projects also is one of the greatest ways to be successful in community building. Don't just show art. Make people respond to art, make people create art, get that emotional connection with people. There's too many events that we see around that are just exhibits that the artist is sitting by quietly, the stuff is on the wall, and nobody's interacting. Make it interactive. And that's how you can contact me. Thank you. David, do you want to do questions after we're both done, or?
Probably, unless there was some specific.
The only question I'd have is,
talked about before, during, and after. What kind of dialogue would you have after one of your projects?
So we always do a survey, and we say, hey, we think you came to our event, because we're never quite sure. What did you think? Was it what you expected? Should we have done things differently? Would you like us to do this again? I mean, we randomly go through a series of questions, kind of depending on what kind of outcome we're looking for. There's been some projects where we had much more specific goals in terms of reaching a specific audience that we have different types of questions. We run a newsletter blast. When we're not doing anything, we talk about what everybody else in the community is doing. And we get people saying, can you share the thing that we're doing? And we get overwhelmed. Well, I get overwhelmed because I'm the one that has to do it. So we created a whole bunch of self-serve tools for the Greater Norwalk arts community. So there's an arts list that is a Google list that people can email, and things will get disseminated to the 400 people that are on that list. But what we found is that most people will not take even that effort to communicate on their own. They want to give it to someone who will then blast it out. And the problem with that is it's much more authentic if you send out your own information, because then people can respond directly to you. So we have that going on. We have a Facebook group going on. We have Instagram. We're not on TikTok yet, but we're on YouTube. We're on all the social media, and we encourage people to, become members of the various things and post things up. And that's part of why we did Iconic Norwalk as well.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Give a pocket or somewhere. You can either clip it or just put it in a pocket.
This is my postcard telling you
Throw
all
it.
of the details
It's all right if it's visible.
of what the Iconic Norwalk project is.
Okay, okay, and then this, you just flip it. Oops, it's this one.
And I did that much faster than Harder got my
So this is the, if you need the pointer, you can, that's the top button. And otherwise it's just forward and back for the slides. You just click, click, click.
Let's say forward and back.
Yeah,
And then this.
backward, forward.
Oh, I like that.
Yes. There's no cats here today to play.
I just want to say thank you so much for hosting this Fairfield Alliance, David, everything, because it's just such a fantastic notion. The empty storefronts and space that could be utilized, places that could be better. So let me see, is this going to, okay, forward, let me see where you, this project started in New Haven. I had started taking over storefronts about 20 years previous to this when I saw in New York City, all these galleries were in the storefronts and people were running them and they had this whole scene. I said, if they do it, I could do it. So I went to New Haven and I said, hey, could I use the storefront for a little while for a few $100? And that's how the love started. I love pop-ups, but I love art storefront programs even more because of the longevity of giving entrepreneurs a chance, changing communities. So I'm going to do ancient history with you all. Phantom Gallery was one of the first noteworthy projects. These were empty storefronts in LA in a deserted part of town, but they were only art installations. People could not go in and out of them. They did something for the neighborhood, but they didn't do anything for artists or people. There were other storefront programs popping up. Of course, Lower Manhattan Cultural Council had a great storefront exchange, but one of the problems was the pop-ups, they came out of a European background, but you would go in and do a hit and leave. You wouldn't improve the neighborhood. You would do things that, you're not building something. I love pop-ups, and I think that maybe perhaps in this room we'll create a new hybrid of storefront programs and pop-ups. So New Haven, Connecticut, I get this job and I'm trying to do something with the empty storefronts. None of the landlords will play. I'm despondent. I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull off it. And then I find this row of empty storefronts that are all connected. And I think I've hit the jackpot. So this was related companies. They happen to own places all over Connecticut. And I made friends with them, and I made it easy on them. I said, I'll take care of everything. I got the insurance. And I went back to where I worked at the City of New Haven doing public art and managing the program, and said, let's start a storefront program, and let's give entrepreneurs a little bit of money, have them do a application and give them a chance, and let's give them a storefront. So that's how it was all born. You know, this PowerPoint you're seeing is indeed ancient history, and we put it together to get an NEA grant. And a year went by running this, and we all forgot about that grant we wrote, and then we got it. So, you know, enhancing the streetscape, wonderful idea, you know, just with trash or whatever you have. And just like in Jackie's, you just use what you have in the streets. You know, the traditional gallery system is very different now. It's not like it was. People think it is, but you do much better just popping up or being in a program where you can show your art and bring your community together. Fashion shows, anything you can think of. We had a whole system of just any events people wanted to do, and it was a creative catalyst. People would come, and we created community. So right away we started, you know, we need some money to run this thing, so we went around and, you know, got people invested in it, and everyone was like, I don't know, I don't want to give a storefront, but then they saw the success happen, and then everybody was in. Identify and negotiate. Maybe if you all are doing pop-ups, you're at a phase where you might need some tips on that. I can tell you, you know, my experience and how to work with difficult land people.
I think that's a key concern.
Yeah, so yeah, you know, basically we want to make them heroes, make it easy, show them the results. If you showed them Jackie's PowerPoint, my storefront program had 100% success rate. After 3 months, their place would be rented. And now some of those storefronts are going into a 10-year lease. So it wasn't like a flash in the pan. It's still going on in New London. Hartford started iConnect out of this. New London, we had another initiative. It was all over the state. There were some stories that didn't go really well where I'd go in and clear out an entire building and everything would be great. The community was happy. They had a theater, and then the landlord took the space back because they thought, ooh, I could make some money now. That building is still vacant. Karma. So this program was no joke. You had to apply. We wanted to see if you had a solid business plan, and there was a lot of tough vetting people involved. This is Ken of the Grove. Grove started in one room and then took over an entire city block and had many copycats. That's over a long period of time, but it was like, oh my God, they're taking more storefronts. It's super successful. It made me so happy. You know, application process, all this created community. It was fun. One of the things about doing this project was the way the project looked. It had to have a great graphic. It had to be identifiable. You had to invite, you know, unusual partners down and invest them in it. And that's what we did. And we made sure that Yale come in with their musicians. There's the mayor there. And we don't have any money doing this. It's like the whole program for a year ran on, with me included, $30,000. So as it started to grow and get more successful, press started coming. People from other states, how are you doing this? They started coming. The money finally filtered through. I'll tell you more about that. So some of the problems are like the security, you know, the expectations of the entrepreneurs, lack of the business training. Business training is great, but you know, if you really want to be in a storefront, you've already studied this up. All right. So the support structures, you can lead people in to get this type of training, but at the end of the day, it's a lot of hard work and it's not for everybody. After 3 months in a storefront, some people figured out it's not for me. After 3 months in a storefront, other people said, I can't wait to sign the lease. This is what I wanted to do my whole life. So that's sort of some of the things that came out. And this is the beginning. This is a long time ago. And I had to keep moving. So what happened was all these creatives, like our friend Kyle and you know, Upcycle Arts and all of this started growing out of these spaces on the street there. And, you know, then we got a little award, oh nice, And then we're in phase 2 now, where we get 2 awards, $1,000 and the first Creative Economy Award, because we were creating a creative economy. We weren't doing flash in the pan, and people were actually making money. The neighborhood was lit up and better. We closed the street off. We worked at the restaurants, and that type of stuff was going on. Then more press is following. Multiple sites. It was a busy person. So the storefront you see there was one of the worst in New Haven. Everybody said, don't work there. But it was the exact place to go to the worst and transform that, and you will show them what you can do. That landlord, yeah, of course you can have this for no rent for a year. Thank you so much. You painted for me, you cleaned, you changed my reputation. And so that, quickly after a few years, a developer snatched it up, bought it, and made it the cool coffee shop. So it transformed. It wasn't revitalization, it was pre-vitalization. So let's see. All right, we have this drab, horrible looking building, nothing's going on, and then it's fabulous because we have this notion. So a couple of Yale graduates said, we want to try this thing they're doing on the West Coast. We want to open a free store. And I'm like, okay, and I'm a little nervous myself, but we did it and we tried it. Everything was free. It was when all the Yale students get out, they dump all their stuff somewhere it has to go, so it all came to the free store. So it was a crazy scene, and they also had the notion of a bicycle shop. If you could learn how to repair this, you can have a bicycle, because none of the kids knew how to work on bicycles anymore. So that was kind of cool. So managing this crew with events and everything, it's a 24-hour-a-day job. So what happened here with the free store was it became so successful, nobody wanted to go home at night. We have professors, homeless people, doctors, priests, people coming through. Everybody was coming to see, what is this free store? So it got a really big renter who came in like RMI or something, and that was the end of the free store. The free store needed to go. It was getting a little out of hand. So this woman opens something called Empty Space. She sees what we're doing, and then she becomes her own real estate agent renting out pop-ups. So you can see like the ripple effect of a storefront program is like so much fun to see all these things happening. I'm going to go a little quick just because of time. So after running the storefront program for, 2 or 3 years, I wanted to start doing exchanges with other states and bringing talent in that was, not great in the winter at Mass Mocha. So we'd invite Martha to come down, and we'd go up there, and this was going great for a while. The holidays are always a good time for storefronts and pop-ups, and I think people love coming into something unique and if you're in your pop-up experience, talking and having a dialogue with an actual person that made the objects. Then your storefront becomes like the Underground Railroad. It's the route for all the trucks, the mobile trucks. All are coming by. Can I do a pop-up here tonight? And people traveling around in trucks. So that's a really interesting development I really liked. And then a light in the downtown area, we started a light festival, which went for 5 years, drove more traffic. So all the storefronts stayed open at night. More storefronts moved in, and it was just a whole new neighborhood. And that was the best part about this storefront program, which I think went on for another 5 or 6 years. I went to work at the state doing this for the entire state and all the municipalities. And I really, Hartford was very different. Like probably Westport, the rents were very high. Landlords didn't want to give them up. It was on Market Street. So what their initiative was called was I Connect. And they were able to take a few storefronts. It was the hardest negotiation ever. So you probably, what is the print shop there? Hartford Prints was a business that went in a storefront program called I Connect and managed to stay all this time and negotiate a lease at a reduced rate. So some of the winners are that reduced rate, and they were able to thrive. The beginning, the changes, people here are not paid. They're dropping by because they want to see this transformed, because they want to see music here in their neighborhood with their group of people, and they don't want to go to a bar. The ripple effect was people tagging each other and saying, go to New Haven and create a piece of art, and it just became a bunch of people coming in and making work, dropping by from other states all around Connecticut. These are some of the people that actually in the storefront a long time ago. Storefronts have a soul. They have a feeling inside. And these folks were here talking about when it was like Chess King or something. And they were musicians, so they played that night. And as you can see, it just was a wonderful gathering of artists. Sometimes that bohemian idea that I'm going to move to an artist community for an art student, it doesn't exist anymore. But in a storefront program, or if in a growing pop-up, or what Jackie's doing, you can have that again, and you'll be able to talk to creative people. So, all right, we're going along, going along. You know, a simple thing of throwing the chessboard out there for people to stop and play. You know, it doesn't have to be big money ways of getting people to come in and get engaged. Come in and convene. Walk-ins are always welcome. So Neville's a success story. You could see a lot of the anchor people on TV wearing his clothes. He was in a little tiny workshop in Westville. We gave him a chance at the storefront. He took that storefront, started blocking off the street and having fashion shows, and then took another storefront, and now he's across from the Yale Art Museum. And he's, you know, always giving lessons to the community, which is really good. So to be in this program was no joke. You had to do this paperwork. You had to track. You had to talk about your profit and loss and what were you doing. And your doors must be open. Do not have your be eating your lunch, sitting in the front. It was all like super professional, and I was pretty much the police of the operation, trying to tell them your window's the window to the world. So be careful, and have it look great and clean. This was just what we had to do to sort of get to that next level of finding funding and convincing people that there's money in this. You're going to do great, Mr. Landlord, or related properties. Here's what's going on. So then a merchants associated was started. This was in the 9th Square, which still goes on today, and they do the monthly things. And you know, I want to just talk a little bit about engaging unseen populations and social service programs, just the whole community as a whole. And I know that Jackie's program is the same as this, is you just want to have everybody involved. And, you know, reach out to someone from Brooklyn, take the train. We're on the train line. It's easy to get here. Let's exchange and have some fun. So press. Other places started saying, how can we do this? Well, it's not so easy in other places, but they find their own way. They use the basic principles of this and have a little seed money. They're able to do it. Just a little bit about, you know, the Grove's rise to stardom and then selling their business finally. You know, in New Haven, there's the college. There's a lot of creative minds. The Borst opened up as another co-working space, and it lived for a long time. And actually here we're doing a presentation about this movement. At the end game, you know, the whole neighborhood is hopping. So Make Haven, another success story that came out of this. So much comes out of doing pop-ups and storefront programs. So very proud about all these things where no one wanted to go into, and doing the movies, you know, it really worked. This program worked. So I think that's pretty much it. I do want to say after this, what happened was Art Place America gave us a grant, and we were just all around in the state of Connecticut. And then I was in Memphis with Bloomberg's innovation team. They said, how can we do this in the worst part of Memphis? And they started something called Mem Shop, which runs today. I couldn't update my stuff here, but just if you're interested in this, look at Mem Shop, because then they started Mem Mobile. You know, they took over this Broad Street area, and the marketing on it was so brilliant. You see it like, wow, that looks so good. I just want to go there. And they really changed a lot of how Memphis was. There was a part of Memphis called Soulsville, and the buses would drive in, go to Stax Record, and drive out. So we had to change that by investing the local folks to, you know, open a little pie shop, or let's keep some money in the neighborhood. So I just want to say, in your storefront exploration, look at Mem Shop, and just really excited to see what you all want to do here. I hope that you'll start a program and take over all these storefronts and make them like a campaign. Get your beautiful branding down in every storefront. Get all these people to participate and have your little trail, and I think it just will create a creative community. I noticed from, years ago, I'm from Connecticut, there used to be real art down here in this part of Westport. So I know there's a lot of great chains and all great stuff happening, but it'd be great to see a little bit more, making, and be able to talk to an artist or start your art collection with one of your works. So thanks, everybody. I'm very passionate.
That was so exciting.